Hi, everybody. I'm getting back in the hang of making videos again after all of the travel and the chaos. I'm back here. How y'all doing? We are here today for a July wrap up because there's a lot of stuff. There's a reading wrap up and a writing wrap up because a lot was happening in July. So we're going to divide it out into 2 Wednesdays. And it was delayed. I know today is August 10th. There has already been a first Wednesday, and that's usually when I do my first videos. But I was preparing to go camping. So we had a delay. We were traveling from California to Oregon and then to Washington and then back to Oregon. And it was super, super hot. So the delay was needed. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pernard. If you don't already know, I am a historical fiction author with 5 books out. I write about the 19th century British Empire, underdog edition. So, not the aristocracy, usually. And so I'm reporting back about my reading in July, reading edition. And to find out about the writing wrap up, that will be next Wednesday. So welcome, everybody. Shannon said hello and made friends with the like button. Nick stopped by and asked you to subscribe. So, friends doing the hard work for me here. Anita dropped by to say hello. Cool Gamer is in the house and Nadeem. Everybody's here. Thank you for stopping by. So, what am I going to do first for this? The biggest thing for reading in July for me is, this is my second year. It is the same as last year, Jane Austen July. And if you weren't here, I did several collaborations with Nia at the Vixen of Fiction channel. So if you want to check those out, I will definitely pop up. The first book I read, Emma, we discussed on the last day of July. So I'll point that out to everybody. I read my paperback version, which is the same one I had in high school. So, I reread it for the first time since high school, and it's still a meh book. There are other Jane Austen books that I like a lot better. So, my report out from Emma, even comparing it to Clueless and the 2020 version adaptation, is that it's pretty good. It's pretty well plotted. It's got a lot of humor in it, but she's just not my girl. Like, other heroines are more my style. So 3.5 stars. I don't know. How do you even rate a Jane Austen? Just not my favorite. So later on, I'm going to talk about all the prompts for Jane Austen July and how I measured up. I didn't intentionally aim for any of them, but you will see that I like that era a lot. And so some of them coincidentally fell into the prompts. So we'll see how I measure up in a couple seconds. Emma. Then I've got Regency Romance, and that is on an overlay. Hey, Ben. Welcome. Put this overlay. So I really liked this one. This is Never a Duke by Grace Burroughs. And this is notwithstanding the fact that I can't manage to spell the author's last name correctly. So Burroughs, O-W-E-S. I keep wanting to do it like a rabbit, Burroughs. But Grace Burroughs, this is the first book of hers that I've read. And I read it on Libro. So I gave this 4 stars. It was a detective combining forces with an oddball Regency heroine, and they solve a mystery at the same time they're dashing around London and finding out about each other's scarlet pasts, I suppose, and finding solace in each other. And I really liked it. It was really well done. And I especially liked the narration. They had a ton of accents that this guy did, and so I would want to bump it up, except that that's just the narration. So I felt that that was cheating a little bit, but I would really recommend this, and I look forward to reading more of Grace Burroughs and seeing if she holds up in other books as well, because this is the type of formula, type of writing that I really appreciate. So Regency era, but nothing to do with Jane Austen. But I'm going to put it in the same grab bag. So there you go. The other Regency romance that I read was my friend Emilee Harris's book, and it was The Captain's Surrender. And I think this was book 2 in the series, and the other one I read was book 4. You can read them out of order. It's not necessary to read them in order. And this was a backstory about a woman in the Highlands who needs help to restore her inheritance and her stability, her financial security, basically. And someone from the family that peppers the series with heroes comes up, and he has not a scarlet past, but he's dealing with issues from his time in the military and wants to be her champion because they knew each other when they were younger. So it's a second chance romance. And then, things ensue. The neighbor and the misunderstandings, but not the type I don't like. So I really like this. I think this was 3.75, 3.5. A good solid HEA romance set in the Regency. The cover is a bit much for me, but this is fine. I read this as an ebook and really like Emilee's heroes and heroines and how they get together. So that was super fun. So those are my 2 Regency romances that I'm glumping in with Jane Austen July. And then I've got a Regency Mystery, which is by one of my favorite authors. This was Jane and the Waterloo Map. And when I was in California, I stopped by a used bookstore and found that they had a copy of a Stephanie Barron book. And even though it's out of order and I had to skip 2 or 3 titles, I picked it up and I couldn't stop myself from tearing through it because she is the person whose books I read and think that I'm reading Jane's diaries. She writes a Jane Austen detective heroine and weaves in history and nonfiction and really great plotting and spectacular mysteries. So I really love Stephanie Barron's series, the Jane Austen mysteries. And I don't think it spoiled anything, but we'll see when I go back and read the Christmas one. And there's another one, I think, in between, whether I spoiled anything for myself. But recently I was chatting with someone in the comments. It'll come to me who it was. And we were talking, maybe it was Gemma, Gem of Books. She did a bookstore tour and found a Henry's Hotel that was the living place of Henry Austen, one of Jane Austen's brothers at one time. And I visited the website, of course, and found that they bill Henry as Jane's favorite brother. And I don't think that's true. At least it's not the impression I get from Stephanie Barron's books, and she does a lot of good research. So I think when we were talking in the comments, Gemma and I both thought it was Frank, the younger brother in the Navy, who was Jane's favorite. So if you have an insider tip on this and corroborate our impression or set us straight, let us know. Who was Jane Austen's favorite brother? So this is definitely in the spirit of Jane Austen July, even though I don't think it hits any prompts. We'll check on that later. 4 stars, definitely. So that was my Regency Mystery. Then I've got a Regency Modern retelling that I also got through Libro.fm. Let me check in here. I did start early. I just tweeted that I started early. I want to go and get the bread from the bakery before they're all out. So I just cranked it 15 minutes early. You're fine. Or you can go to the beginning and just listen at 2 times speed until you catch up, which is how I do some videos sometimes. Richard Holiday is also here saying, "What's this about the English?" Yeah, I'm talking about the Jane Austen July segment, and we're going to finish up with a book about the English. So stay tuned, Richard. So Pride by Ibi Zoboi is the modern retelling of, you guessed it, Pride and Prejudice. And it is set in a gentrifying neighborhood in the Bronx. And there's the 5 sisters of a Afro-Haitian, Puerto Rican, Dominican, all mixed up family, and it follows pretty closely Pride and Prejudice. So I was able to pick out who was going to do what and how it was going to happen. Very well written. Lots of history of the neighborhood, lots of updated dilemmas for the heroine that were very well worked in, that you don't really see in Pride and Prejudice, the original, but it was really nice to see the modern version digging into that character coloring. So I really liked it. Listen to it on Libro.fm. If you want to listen to Libro.fm, there's a link, an affiliate link down in the description. So Pride was really good, funny, snappy, emotional at times. They had a Catherine de Bourgh character, but the person who was like an emotional center for Elizabeth Bennet, who is the narrator or the point of view character, didn't really have a counterpart in the original. I mean, yeah. So if you've read this or you have a solution for this that I didn't see, definitely let me know. But I definitely enjoyed this. 3.75. And I think we have one more modern retelling, the nonfiction. So let me snap out of this and highlight this one and first say hello to Jenna, the soul writer, stopping in to leave a like while bouncing around doing a bunch of other lunchtime things, leaving on play while lurking. Thanks for sharing all your epic reads. My pleasure, Jenna. Thanks for stopping in. Okay, so here is the final roundup for Jane Austen July. This is a book that I've had for years and years. It is a TBR veteran or an ancient TBR, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so it's marked ART and $8, which means I got it definitely before 2019, probably more like 2017 from the bookstore where I worked before it closed. So yeah, looking at it probably 6 or 7 years. Watching the English, The Hidden Rules of English Behavior by Kate Fox. And Kate Fox is actually an anthropologist. And there's some YouTube videos of her talking to scholarly audiences. This is from a while ago. It's like 15 years old at least. But she turned her anthropologist's eye on her own countrymen, which I found fascinating. She does some apologizing at the beginning for, it's not real anthropology because you're not in a mud hut, whatever. But she did a lot of social experiments and observation of her fellow English folk and came to some interesting conclusions. So I thought this was really interesting, especially because she goes into the historical stuff a little bit, but not very much. But it sort of fits into the Jane Austen July because it talks about, here we go, it talks about reflexes. So what English do without thinking to make themselves comfortable. It talks about values, which I thought was really interesting and differed a little from America. And it talks about outlooks, which is a little more hazy in my understanding, but is found everywhere. So the reflexes, and Richard will appreciate this because you can see it's true, are to make everything a matter of humor. So humor is a reflex, modesty is a reflex, so self-deprecation, and hypocrisy, meaning like, oh, I didn't want another slice of cake, or whatever the situation is, saying the things that you don't mean to make other people feel more comfortable. So I was like, ding, ding, ding. She has lots of great examples, and she's very funny when she's writing it and revealing these automatic reflexes and in different contexts. So it's really great. The values were fair play. So fair playing field, you always want to have it appear as if everyone is getting a fair chance. Courtesy. So that's why we get the initial impression that Brits are so polite until you get to know them. And modesty is in this category. Sorry, it's moderation for reflexes. So you don't want to have too much, don't want to have too little. but modesty is the value. So that's the self-deprecation piece. And then the outlooks that she outlines are empiricism, meaning you're always going to question the premise. Becca Syme will like that. An Eorism, meaning a little bit of cynical outlook and sort of not wanting to be optimistic like those dang Americans, right? And then class consciousness, which is, I think, something that we all think of when we think of British society in general, is that you're very aware of and constantly detecting status indicators and making allowances for some, or making judgments about others. And that's true all over, but it's a particular brand of it for the Brits. So, and she also says, obviously, when I say Brits, I'm being a little inexact, because watching the English, she's really talking just about England, not the Welsh, not the Scottish, not the Northern Irish, and the particular, this is a long time ago, so it's got nothing to do with Brexit. But, there are maybe some seeds in there if you wanted to connect the dots. So interesting. So like I said, I've had that for a long time, and I'm glad I finally picked it up and got through it. And connected it to my other British reads. So there we go. Ben saying, we're watching you to Richard. Richard says, as a Brit, I regret nothing. The end. Yeah, it is interesting. Yes. Wow. 3 of 3. Humor, sarcasm, and modesty, or moderation is what I meant to say. Hypocrisy. Yeah, so one of the things I grew up with was not being direct and saying exactly what you think, but being polite to people. And I think that's more on the British end of things, whereas some Americans grow up being very, very direct and straightforward. And that can come off as brash and pushy, And so the Brits are on the far end of the spectrum in terms of being hypocritically courteous, or knowing that what they're saying isn't what they really feel, but everyone's in on the joke or the trick. And so it's just how you get along. So, yeah. Ben says, some might say that I am the most modest person. Funny. By the way, congrats Running to Write on Falling Through being launched. I was pecking around the trailers and the teasers and Barrett's show. So very excited that it's out. Rachel is here. Yay, I made it. Richard is very tactful with a little halo face. Oh, England. Brexit? Question mark? Yeah. Is passive aggression innately British? That's an interesting question. I don't think so. Did they originate it? Or is it innate? Well, there's an interesting section on queuing, which I think you would find pertinent to this question. Queuing, or standing in a line, is something English people do very well and automatically, because it's a fair play value that they adhere to. But if someone seems like they're cutting, or whatever it's called, or trying to cut in the line, then everyone else gives them dirty looks, makes little noises, very pushing out signals of judging them, right? Because you're not adhering to the norm, and we're going to judge you for it. We're not going to speak out about it because, I don't know, moderation, hypocrisy, whatever other value, but you're a bad person. So it's interesting. Americans are brash and pushy. Well, there's relativity in everything, right? Literally taking the words out of my mouth. It's been an exciting week. Yay for Ben. Shannon says, I grew up being direct, but learned that most people don't respond well to that and have modified what I do, although it still happens sometimes. Yeah, people have different backgrounds depending. Queuing is a British institution. Agree. If you skip the queue here in the UK, then you deserve the evil looks. Yeah. Well, what's funny is she does observation experiments where she's observing people who are not trying to skip the line. And the reverse is when person A might be seen to be jumping the line, but is confused or maybe like their intention is sort of hazy, smoky, and person B and C and D are in line and they're giving the dirty looks. But then the person A reveals, oh, I wasn't trying to. Is this the end? And then they hop to. Then persons B and C and D have to sort of look shamefaced or look like, oh, I never suspected you. Like it's this whole like ballet that she sort of narrates, and it's just hilarious to an observer from the sidelines. Rachel is saying, no, passive aggression is not uniquely British. Well, he didn't say uniquely. He said innately. So is it something they're born with that feels automatic because it's so deeply ingrained? Maybe. Do tend to think of things we'd like to say about naughty people. We tend not to say anything. Yeah. And that's largely dispersed in America, too. Richard's interested in giving this book a read now. Yeah, you might be able to find it in a bookshop. I've got lots of page turn downs, so I would want to keep this. Otherwise, I would send it to you. But yeah, I'll put it in my bookshop if we have a copy available. So better self-control for not saying mean-spirited things. Passive aggression just comes so naturally. Yeah. So that is the Jane Austen July sort of cauldron that I've thrown things in. That's 6 books so far. And let's see how it measures up to the prompts of Jane Austen July, put on by Claudia, Marissa, and Katie. The first one is read one of the main 6 novels by Jane Austen. Check. Second one is read something else by Jane. No, I didn't have another Jane book. Third is read a nonfiction about Jane. And I went, because we've got some historical tidbits from the 18th and 19th century in watching the English, but it's not specific, so I can't really count that one. Number 4, read a retelling of a Jane Austen novel, which I did with Pride by Ibi Zoboi. Number 5, read work by a contemporary of Jane, which I did not do. Number 6, read a direct screen adaptation. And I said yes, but I had to put direct in quotes because if you know about the Netflix Persuasion adaptation, you know that you can hardly consider that a direct adaptation. Whatever. It was terrible. And then number 7, read a modern direct screen adaptation, or watch, sorry. And I put like this because for the screen, I always forget what Nia calls her series, her page to screen adaptation examination that we did on July 31st. For that, I watched lots of clips from the 2020 Emma and clips from Clueless to remind me. But I mean, that is deeply ingrained. You want to talk about deeply ingrained, like that 1990s movie? The quotes are all in there. So yes. So that's a this. So 1, 2, 3, and 2 maybes and 2 X's. So not bad for not even like trying to plan it. I did participate and really love this as an event and an institution on BookTube. So yay, hosts for that. Oh, thank you. Shannon and Rachel and Ben are coming to my rescue here. Scripting the book. Thank you. Anita saying Netflix Persuasion is a ridiculous rom-com. Yeah, exactly. Or as we might say, tuh, right? Like, stay away from me, Satan. Okay, so now we're at the midpoint. I've got my 6 books in. We've talked about the Jane Austen July and the prompts. And I was going to ask if anyone had any fun camping stories because I just came back from camping. And I got to see, I wrote down all the wildlife I got to see geese on the lake, bunnies in the salal, robins, a bald eagle eating its dinner, which was fantastic, ravens on the last morning, and it was just very peaceful. I felt very lazy, and I almost had like an itchy compulsion of like, I know my editorial calendar is waiting for me. Like, I need to get back to a screen. But I did enjoy the singing and the Gaelic language practice and the meeting new folks and being out in Washington State on Whidbey Island. It was beautiful. So if anyone else has gone camping to a beautiful place recently, let us know in the comments where you would recommend. I brought a whole fortress of mosquito repellent solutions, and I only got 2 bites, so I'm pretty pretty proud of that. That is one of my like downfalls of camping. That's why I don't do it more often. Mm-mm-mm. There we go. Shannon saying all those birds feels like Tracker. The Bethany Votaw book that you just went through in the Two-Bird Book Club, hosted by Books by Adrian. Richard just found Watching the English by Kate Fox online for purchase. There we go. And tweet. Yep. Ben says Woodby is beautiful. Yes. And I got a new collection, a new like handful of rocks, which I know you're not supposed to do. But, take a little bit of rocks and it's nice. It's nice to remember the places that you've been through rocks. So, yeah. So, that is my halfway through. Don't forget to like the stream. Don't forget to share if you're on your way out and doing other social media stuff. And let's get back to, let me see what this is. Coming attractions, upcoming things. I've got karaoke hosting this Saturday with Barrett Laurie. And if Barrett is tuning in at some point, this is his reminder that if you've got songs for recommendations or songs for yourself, feel free to pop them in the chat. Feel free to find a karaoke version for yourself and come join us on the stage. We love having guests on. So that is this Saturday at, I think it is back to 5 p.m. Pacific. So like 1 a.m. UK time. Sorry, Richard. It might be earlier. Anyway, it's on my channel. You can check it out. It's Saturday karaoke. Sunday, I'll be doing Sunday on StreamYard with KatieReads&Rants, who just moved back to Michigan. So she will be settling in, and I'll be doing a little live stream tutorial with StreamYard with Katie, which would be a treat. And then the next Wednesday is the writing wrap-up, the other half of this wrap-up of July. So hopefully we'll see you there. Dia from Novel Idea. Hello, hello. We are headed to Montana this weekend. We love Whidbey. Awesome. We have camped all along the Washington coast and the San Juans. We love all of it. Oh, lovely. We got some singing in there. Yep. We got some plotting and scheming behind the scenes. Glad to see it. Okay, so let's continue with the books. What else do I have here? I've got Listening Valley by D.E. Stevenson. This could have gone in May of the Moderns, and I had an inclination to hold on to it until next May of the Moderns because I don't want to use it up before and then run out of candidates. But it was so sweet, and it came along when I wanted something that was just sweet and nice and romantic. And so this fit the bill. It's from 1944. D.E. Stevenson is an author I had not read before. She writes quiet, is it coming of age or is it domestic? I'm not really sure. She's kind of got the similar profile to a Persephone writer. She's got some interesting commentary on society and women's role. And I would say this is definitely a coming of age book. It's got a poor aristocrat, boo-hoo, I know, as a central character. Happens to take place during World War II, but also leading up because it's coming of age. And the poor aristocrat girl is an oddball, and she's likable for it. So I definitely like this. There's nature, sort of finding your solace in nature vibes to this, and finding authenticity in yourself rather than measuring yourself up against the world. So I like that message, and very easy read. So recommend that. I can't remember if it was 3.75. I didn't have any 5-star reads this month. They're all just pretty good, very fair, 3.75, 4.0. So that's where we are. D.E. Stevenson would recommend. Then we've got, this monster that took me 2 months. So The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. And so this I had been waiting a long time to get a copy of, finally got a copy of, and then took me several months to dive into it. It's rather thick, and I've got lots of tabs here. But the highlights, since I went through this morning to sort of give you some highlights to see if you'd be interested. the picture on the front references the maps. If you're a historical fiction writer like I am, you may be familiar with the fire insurance maps, because these were one of the first and earliest reliable maps for cities in the US, because they would plot who was living where, what the who was paying what insurance, so you would know what fire company would go where to put out any fires. And so this is like early 20th century. But this kind of map is what you get the term redlining from, because the FHA, which provided insurance for mortgages in the 30s, had some interesting rules. It was a federal government, and there were some before and after court case decisions that either mandated segregated neighborhoods or allowed people to segregate neighborhoods. And there's a lot of interlocking factors, which is what I found out and what I tried to highlight here. So basically, he was looking at all the ways segregation and discrimination were unconstitutionally perpetuated by the federal government in the 20th century. And so he talks about examples in St. Louis, including Shelley versus Kramer, which actually was the court decision that ended the segregation in zoning. Talks about the IRS and who they gave tax credits to, which is a very pertinent discussion for now when we have churches doing things and nonprofits doing things and getting nonprofit status tax breaks when they're very questionable activities. That is sort of like the blessing of the federal government if you get tax breaks, right? There were lots of examples, not lots, there were numerous examples in this book of creative efforts where people tried to do developments that had integrated components. They tried to get around the rules. They tried to sneak by without arousing protests and rallies and riots on the part of the white people who didn't want integration. But it was ridiculous lengths that people had to go to try to sneak these in before the court cases came through to reverse all this. And they didn't get widespread, because once you do a trick once, it doesn't work because the people are wise to it, unfortunately. The most, I guess, insidious argument that he refutes in this is that segregation was started because people thought that if you have an integrated neighborhood, your property values go down. And so that's why segregation was a no goal, I guess, because you wanted to retain your property rights. But he picks that apart and shows that it's because you had restrictive insurance guarantees, which made the mortgages different for African Americans in an area. They had to have contract sales, which were terrible. They had higher rents for African Americans, which meant they had to take in more people. So you had overcrowding, and then you had overtaxed schools. And there's sort of like several little strings that were pulled to enforce segregation and white supremacy led to this being true, but it wasn't because African Americans were living there, obviously. And so it might be something that you've grown up knowing is always trotted out on news segments, is always trotted out in novels, or like as a fear for white supremacy. And you kind of think, well, it sort of acts out true in history. So we don't want it to be true, but why would it not be true? And he does a great job of like pulling out the financial stuff and the federal government involvement in the financial stuff that made it true. So that was really interesting. The condemning land, what is that called? Eminent domain. He talks about that a little bit. He talks about transportation plans, and he gets into Maryland. So JC, if you're coming by to watch this, he's talking about why certain rail lines went in and others didn't. And here's a really interesting quote. I pointed out here, 189. A review by Johns Hopkins University researchers concluded that the residents believed that the rail line would enable poor inner city Blacks to travel to the suburbs, steal residents' TVs, and then return to their ghettos, end quote. Maryland's state transportation secretary stated that his office, quote, would not force a transit line on an area that clearly does not want it, end quote, failing to explain how he balanced the desires of a white suburban area, quote, that clearly does not want it, end quote, with the desires of urban African Americans who needed it. So, yeah, exactly. It's always the people with the power who are put ahead. Their needs, their desires are put ahead of the needs of others. And they don't have to explain it because it's just what the system enables. So we see that in housing, we see that in the IRS and the taxes, we see that in the transportation planning, the zoning at the local level, and at the courts' decisions in the states and whatnot. So, and then there were two other things I thought were interesting. So here's something that I had wondered about for a long time, and he put it into words that are much more eloquent than I could have. Because our majority culture has tended to think of African Americans as inferior, the words we've used to describe them, no matter how dignified they seem when first employed, eventually sound like terms of contempt. African Americans react and insist on new terminology, which we eventually accept until it too seems to connote inferiority. So this explains why we keep updating our language to describe Black, Indigenous, people of color as like one of the newest terms, but they keep changing it because the attitudes and the white supremacy framework is still there. So it's still going to twist the meaning of those words because of the people it describes into this like not derogatory perhaps, but not appreciated moniker. And so you keep having to update it. And so that's one of those things where like, it's not a solution, but you like, how do you change the attitudes so that the language doesn't keep changing on that for that reason? So I thought that was interesting. And then 223. The last piece was the definition of integrated. So this is one I hadn't thought of, but he talks about the definition of integration by different folks. Surveys show that most African Americans prefer integrated neighborhoods. So do whites. But African Americans define an integrated community as one in which from 20 to 50% of residents are African American. Whites define it as one where they dominate and in which only 10% of residents are African American. So they're measuring, this is weird, they're measuring the perception of different populations of integrated and desirable / safe, right? So you've got whites in the white supremacist framework who are, whatever that's called, dominant status uneasiness. Basically, like if you're on top, you're always wondering who's going to come after you. I think that's what it describes, but Richard Rothstein doesn't go into this. And then you've got the real fears of African Americans who are feeling safe only when they have a higher proportion in the neighborhood. So the definitions are at odds. And how are you ever going to come out to like an equilibrium? So I thought that was a really interesting point that he brought up at the end in the frequently asked questions section. So really interesting book, definitely recommend. Pretty dense. Took me a couple months to get through it, but really valuable information for policymaking and knowing your history. Whew. Okay. So now that I'm like sweating because of talking about all the uncomfortable subjects. Jenna, sounds like most of my neighbors when we first moved to town about 20 plus years ago, small railroad town. Yeah, we've got another Marylander. Jenna can talk to the transportation planning. Nia's here. Nia, I was talking about you earlier for our Jane Austen July piece, so feel free to go back and I'll put that in the cards later. Yeah, scripting the book shout out. Yay. And Nia's saying they shall have to check that one out. Yes, lots of interesting books in July. I brought up Brexit earlier, uncomfortable subjects. Strangely enough, that one didn't make me get all sweaty. Maybe if you had to talk about it, you would. But yeah, it's whatever is closest to our own evolutions, right? So yeah. So Color of Law. Got 2 more books in the nonfiction section today. This one, which I'm including, even though I finished it on August 1st because it was mostly in July. Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. This is an actual book on CD, because I guess it came out in 2015-ish. And if you don't know, Edward Snowden is one of the whistleblowers in the federal government intelligence community. And he's the person who has been living in limbo in Russia for the past 7 years because he would be tried for treason as a whistleblower with no protections if he came back to America. So, what about the book? It's a memoir. It talks about his growing up, his values, his early inclinations for tech as a little nerd boy. He mostly lived around Maryland, Virginia, the Beltway area, and grew up there, had a sort of alternative schooling because he got sick with mono and was out for a long time. He was really smart and just wanted to skip all his subjects and just take a test. He went to a community college to do what he wanted to learn instead of staying with high school, which was like excruciating and relatable. And so he ended up getting a GED and going into get a certification for IT stuff, a database administrator, really like enamored with the internet and all it can do. And then got a job with federal government, and then sort of became a contractor and got into the intelligence community after he tried out for the Army and got injured in training and all that kind of stuff. So that was after 9/11. Signed up for the Army, then went into the intelligence community because his data tech skills were thought to be useful. And then he went from post to post to post to figure out what he could do, database admin wise, security wise, spy wise. He was in the CIA, NSA, etc. And he's really laid it out in a organized narrative, lots of humor, lots of sort of heartwarming moments. He talks about his parents' divorce. He talks about not fitting in. He talks about meeting his girlfriend. And then it sort of shifts into the dawning on him, the realization of what the NSA was doing and that he was not okay with it and he couldn't ignore it. And then how best to advocate for the people whose rights were being violated. And then the sort of lead up to his exit, right? How was he going to get himself out? And then the appeals and the sort of backlash. I thought it was fascinating. I definitely feel like he shouldn't be tried for treason if he comes back. Deserves a pardon. It's one of those things where the book I read by Gore Vidal that was about permanent war for permanent peace, and that the government is now its own machine that is perpetuating its own interests rather than the interests of the people. Definitely vibing with that message. And this is just another aspect that was tech related. He does a really good job of explaining the tech stuff as well. So, yeah, I would really recommend this one. I think this is the highest rating I gave. It was 4.5 stars. Yeah, so would really recommend people read Permanent Record, both for how the tech system has developed, where it is now, and like why he's in Russia. So really interesting. Richard would rather not go down that rabbit hole. Barrett, Barrett, St. Louis got a shout out earlier, but not for a reason you might enjoy. I'll just say that. Yes, you've missed most of the controversy. I read a lot of nonfiction in July. I'm not sure how that happened, but yes, watching the English, Color of Law, and Permanent Record. So recommend all of them. But yeah, controversial. So what that brings us to is my final overlay here. Yeah, Barrett's looking in the comments and saying that Richard doesn't want us to talk about Brexit. Jim is here. Hello. You'll have to go back and watch, Jim. We've mostly covered it on my last book for July, which is a last overlay. Dear Writer, You're Doing It Right by Becca Syme. And this I read as an ebook. So we are going to have a check-in with our monthly reading goals to see if I sort of checked all the boxes and I'm keeping them diverse at the end. But yes, I read this as an ebook, and it's because Becca Syme was one of the speakers in the AuthorTube Writing Conference. So that was another thing that I'll do more report out on in the writing wrap-up. But she gave a great talk that inspired me to look up her material and actually pay for the test to get my writing strengths assessment at Clifton, and then come back to watch all her videos about the ones that I had in my top 5. And so I got to think about input and deliberate and a couple other ones. And then to read this book, which is a writing craft book, more about burnout and how to bounce back. And framing and energy pennies and all these good concepts to learn as a veteran writer. So I would definitely recommend this. It's a short read. It's, like I said, mainly about mental framework and staying in the game. So I really like this one by Becca Syme. And let's head over to our monthly goal check-in. This is a little crib sheet that I took from Melissa at Fully Booked and just put in my own goals. So let's see where they fit. Yes, we're just teasing. See, humor, British humor. They appreciate it. Don't worry. Shannon says, can't wait to read that one by Becca Syme. You're forgiven. All right. Hooray for all the shout outs today. Beth Ann is here. Hello. Nice to see you, Beth Ann. Glad I'm not the only one getting notifications way late. Yeah, I even went live early, so it's not your fault at all. Okay, so we had, let's see, my reading thing here. So if I could just take my face out completely. This is how I do my books as I'm reading along. Books read in July, and I put the title, the author, the format, and the dates. And so, research. Did I do any books for research? Did I? I don't know that I did. I checked the box, but I don't know that I did. Watching the English, I put down as research, but that's very trickle down. I don't know if I'll count that one for myself. Indie. So Emilee Harris's book, The Captain's Surrender, is definitely indie. Becca Syme's book, Dear Writer, You're Doing It Right, is also an indie pub. So that was great. What do I have? I did it out of order because I'm doing it by my planner rather than the thing up here. So let me look at the screen that you're looking at. Research, ebook. So I read Dear Writer was my only ebook. That's fine. One a month. I got it. Audiobook. I read 2 audiobooks. Never a Duke by Grace Burroughs and Pride by Ibi Zoboi. So they were both great. Libro.fm. Can't beat it. Owned TBR. So I wanted that to be 2/3 of the reading. Well, Watching the English was an ancient TBR. Emma was a reread. Permanent Record was one of the books that have been sitting on the floor to get listened to in the car. So that's a good one. And the other ones were all new buys. So that's only like 1/3. So that's a fail. BIPOC author. So Ibi Zoboi. I think she might be the only one. Yep, the only one. So one a month. Nonfiction. Yep, I got like 4 nonfictions, 5 nonfictions. So definitely covered that this month. And the indie pub was Becca's and Emilee's. So I think I missed 2. So not too bad. Not too bad. I don't know that I did this well with June, but that's fine. That's fine. We'll check in every once in a while, just make sure we're like in the plane and remembering our reading goals. Yeah, and then we're good. So Shannon says, so I had a couple videos come out while I was on vacation, still trying to get caught up. Nia's notification was late too. Bethan says, no worries. Working on watching and making videos. Doing great. Getting settled in our new house. And my new job starts Monday. Yikes. Yep. Barrett says, we're just saying YouTube had their stuff together. Nia, I should really know better by now. Meh. I'm on that same mission. Moving the last few weeks and a new job next week. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, I haven't heard about that yet. So I guess we'll see it coming soon in a vlog near you. Interesting, since this is authors in the chat, but there's a thing going on in BookTube right now. So Steve Donahue, who's big, Brian at Bookish, who's big, had like a 10 tips for booktubers to support content creators. And then my friend Elizabeth at Bouquins and Books had a reaction video. So there's like some things going around about the algorithm and how people can support and whether they should support and what they're supporting and like the rebellion. It's exciting. It's exciting, folks. It's a good tennis match. Yes. So congrats to everyone with new jobs. I love it. Bethan says, wow, Barrett, good luck to you too. How did Briley handle the move? I think she was a champ. And congrats on new home and job. Both of you guys. In case anyone is wondering, I can see an ear down there, and Bean handled the car travel like a champ. Probably better than I did. The 10-hour drive with like 3 tiny stops. I don't know how you did stops for Briley. Oh, she's got a yard now. There we go. That's lovely to hear. Bean is always a champ. This is true. This is true. So, did I have any other notes for you guys? Check in with monthly goals. I got that. Oh, the final chat was just songs for karaoke. So final like question is the reminder that this Saturday's karaoke, and this is where I name dropped you earlier, Barrett, that this is your reminder that we have karaoke on my channel this Saturday. So get your songs ready and check my channel for the time because I can't remember when we said it. But this is also Ricky's birthday, so maybe we have to sing some versions of Happy Birthday so that Ricky can hear them, right? New yard is key for my daughter, too, says Beth Ann. Hooray for Bean. Wait, so what do we need to search to see the BookTube discussion about the evil algorithm? I would say 10 tips for booktubers, Bookish is the channel. And then like you'd see, maybe he put in the responses. Yeah. So I need to start making more reaction videos to content like this. I don't know. It's a BookTube thing. So if you want to dip your toe in that, feel free. Billie Jean. All right. We got some ideas going. Excellent. Good song. Follow those clicks. More drama. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But I've been cycling through some like classic musical songs, some Rodgers and Hammerstein, so we might be revisiting those this Saturday. You'll have to tune in to find out. But for now, this is why I started early, because I'm going to go out and hit the grocery store, pick up some fresh bread, which I've been missing, and go sell back some books. So yay! Hope everyone is having a lovely start to their August. Because I was traveling, again, everything is delayed for my channel. So I will see you next week for the writing wrap-up on Wednesday and 2 Sundays on Streamyards. First is Katie Reads and Rants, and then author Lauren Adele. So you have those to look forward to, and karaoke and lots of other things. So, all right, we'll talk to you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay healthy. Enjoy your book reading. Let me know how it's going. Okay, everybody. Bye.